And welcome back. In case you missed the first stream of this morning, or you're brand new here, or you just like to be reminded, we are the Lost Caravan RPG. We do one-shots, we do mini-campaigns, we do long-running campaigns. If it's TTRPG, we pretty much do it all. We are actually doing a bit of a late post-game wrap-up here for the second game of Locus that we played. The Shards of a Broken Mind, or space sci-fi version of Locus, which was just so much fun. Seeing everything that we did from the first game through like that new perspective of these are how all of these different, haunts would be affected if you're putting it in a sci-fi environment. It was just so much fun. But we are getting a little bit late start, so if you like what we do, just the link to our Discord is down below. If you want to join us for games in the future, that's where we post all our casting calls and our schedules and our schedules and stuff. That's where we hang out and be giant nerds together. So, we love having new people to come hang out. But if anyone has any immediate thoughts about the session, I am all ears. Otherwise, I'm gonna jump into some of the questions that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed listening to it. Yeah.
That was going to be my question. What did you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought some of the choices were really interesting. I really liked the way you handled the layers. Um, the ending was just like, yeah.
it
The ending, though,
It still gets me.
it like when I started the concept of writing that, thinking, okay, I want to do something completely different this time. I want to have, multiple realities. I never want to give any indication of which one is real. I don't want any. I don't want one to feel any more or less real than the other, and I 100% am leaving it up to them to decide. And I thought it went extremely well. You all played into it so much. I can't even say how much I appreciate that you all just latched onto that idea and just ran with it. It made it so amazing.
the amount of tinfoil hatting we had to do. Be like, I think it's this one. When in reality, they were just kind of the same. But
No, that
Oh,
really
yeah.
kind of, for me, it was a really good example of that kind of almost freeform ending mystery
Mm-hmm.
that Locus can provide. Yeah, and you all got super into it. It's meant to be tinfoil hatty. That's the way forward.
Absolutely. I know for anyone that has played this or kind of understands, this setup of the game, um, the ending, for as like you said, free form as it is, it does still kind of follow a set path of, there's multiple ways to conclude this. And I I can honestly say that I did not expect self-sacrifice to fall on the table, especially from the characters we had, but yeah, that was fantastic.
Character growth. It was great.
I did want to pass it over to each of you to talk about your characters, like your individual haunts, and like just what you thought of your character story. Or whichever of you wants to go first.
Well, I'll take it up then. Cool. Might as well.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm James Beck, and I played Stefan, a noble engineer with a haunt of I overlooked some warning signs intentionally to make sure the core essentially was ignoring safety warnings, and it blew up, and it hurt a lot of people. And that was kind of the haunt, but I chose to go with an interesting direction compared to my last character, where I didn't regret my haunt until like the last session, where it was very stubborn on of I've done nothing wrong. Anyone else in my shoes would have done the same thing.
Mhm.
Turns out they wouldn't have, and I'm just living in denial. It was an interesting route because sci-fi is something I've always loved watching, especially growing up, and still love to see even horror aspects. Um, yeah, I thought it was a very interesting direction to go with not knowing which reality was real. Because in the last one, we definitely knew, hey, this reality is real. We just, we got to escape it. This one was just like, if we escape, is the other side going to be worse? And I thought that was a very fun narrative thing on your end. I won't say too much else because I know other people need to introduce themselves.
I want to say that your particular monster, the just the Maw of Darkness. Um, I know we didn't get to delve too much into it, like into the specifics, but I don't know how much it came across, but it was never meant to be harmful to you. It was actually supposed to protect you. It was supposed to be this place that you could go. It's it was meant to keep everything else out, to shelter you, which
I didn't know that. I thought the doctor was the main haunt. I'm not gonna lie, just because of how much
no.
I ended up interacting with him. I figured by the end of it, the haunt, like just going to the maw of it all, and then eventually ending out in the spaceship, was a really good like narrative wise of I accept the fate that
Mhm.
is laid out in front of me, and I'm trying to remember. Like I said, it's been a while since I've thought about the stream. I just remember feeling as a player, even when going through that last 30 minutes or so of just going, oh, my character doesn't get the ending, that he would want. He doesn't get to see the next tomorrow. He gets to live on as the essentially in a literary sense, a punishment to his actions, because he became the very thing he was denying existed.
Yeah. Um, yeah, whoever wants to go next. I know, so much pressure.
I will go. My name is Tessa. I played Olivia Lexon. She was a health and well-being officer whose trauma was apparently almost exactly like James's, in
Very
which,
close enough.
yeah, uh, she had been uh, essentially skimming money off the top to fund her own obsession from the ship in the form of, repairs that may be needed. They didn't quite need that many engineers. That person could get fired.
Hmm.
Uh, that repair didn't need to happen. Just, put a little duct tape on it. It's fine.
I mean,
Um,
also knowing that you had a crew chief on board that was Stefan, that was absolutely overlooking safety protocols, and you know, he he was cheap.
yeah, it worked
I was
out for
fast. There's a difference.
me.
Uh, I don't. I think we kind of talked about this, but I don't think you two ever realized that you were on the same ship.
Not until that ending.
And one of the very first things that I came up with when I was going over your haunt, Tessa, was that I wanted it to be a woman from that moment. That woman that was, leaning over you, just screaming, "Look at me, you're gonna be okay. No, it's gonna be fine, just look at me." And that became her phrase throughout the entirety of her attack on you, which was just crying out, "Look at me." Because it was just that moment right before you were ejected to safety and she got melted to death that just stuck.
Yeah, that was uh so I had watched the first stream and I had seen kind of the frozen indecision that had happened to the characters. Not even necessarily the players, but the characters. And it's so true, like you think like in game or even movies, games, uh, you know, oh well, there's no way that you just freeze like that. No, you do. You just everything shuts down and I think at that point, like two people were dying. I think James and oh god, my brain just went blank. I'm sorry. Dave were both, I think, dying at that point, and it
Yeah.
was just like, like throw things at her, like anything, just like, just lordy. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I still, even with all of that, if it wasn't for how it, like James said, it was until the last minute that that we kind of realized and that he switched. If he had switched any sooner, I don't know that Olivia would have ended up admitting that it was her fault. Because it was kind of his insistence that he had done nothing wrong and her being able to see that, no, you fucked up. Oh, wait, that means I did too.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an amazing story between the two of you, and you didn't even know it until the last 10 minutes.
I can only
Revealed it, I was
imagine
just
how
like,
much more
wait.
setup. Yeah. I'm still like awestruck how that
And
even
who've had
happened.
to sit through the entire game. It's like, when are they gonna realize?
The answer was never.
Heck, Dave?
I'll go, sure.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's me, it's Racolot. I played Dr. Macy Donahue, the microbiologist who was pushed to a point that she ended up killing her supervisor because he was trying to steal and or maybe sell data on a microbe found out in space that could serve as a bioweapon. Um, yeah, I decided to do just kind of a complete 180 from my character last campaign because why not? Just like um, Victoria was very much a like bystander who didn't do anything, which is just as guilty as someone who commits the crime in some cases. To we're just going with murder. We're just gonna see what happens.
Justifiable murder.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, that was her haunt, and I don't know if she ever really got to a point where she regretted the haunt itself, but more the consequences that it had on other people that were like, third parties outside of the situation. Which like ended up like, what she ended up doing like after the story ended. Like she stayed on the other side, the side that we dubbed like paradise, but for her it's like never really like it's like, oh, I'm gonna go enjoy this now. It's, oh, I'm put in charge of like fixing everything that happened here. Um which was kind of an interesting like distinction or like nuance, I guess, um to what happened. But yeah, it was really interesting, kind of like in the same vein of Tess and James here, like uh until everything came out about Dave's character, which we'll get to in a little bit, the similarities were very interesting. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and none of us like talked about our backstories with each other, by the way, chat. Like nobody did. It just kind of happened. And I love convergent storytelling. Like it's so great.
Absolutely. Yours for me was the most unique because we got to see two different aspects of it. We got to see, like in hell, what we deemed was hell, basically the aftermath, where this virus got to take over, it got to clear out the ship, and it got to turn everything into this monstrous hellscape where it was allowed to grow freely. And then in paradise, we get to see the beginning of it. We get to see the outbreak where people were showing symptoms, they were being quarantined, the crew was going through these radical procedures of like, if this person was infected, they died, or they're dying, we are going to take them apart and find out everything we can. We're literally running out of options. And it was just that was fun to see for me.
Like I also wasn't expecting like the guy of the hell dimension to be from my hunt. I was like, oh, okay.
I did this.
Oh
Whoops.
my god, I did this. Oh no.
Yeah, and then down to Dave.
I guess that leaves me, and I found the psychiatric profile that I did for Connor, so that'll help. But yeah, so I played Connor Sharp, which was a very violent and very unremorseful. Like, he knew when he killed those guys that it was wrong, but he didn't care that it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And he represented that the unfortunate, there is always a need for violence in these situations where violence is brought upon you. And he was the person that was so disconnected and, quite frankly, so unwell that he could provide that without any drawback. There was actually at that moment during session 0 when we were going over everything, I'm like, Connor's going to run headfirst into everything. I need you guys to pull me back so I don't die. Because as a player, I know that's not what you do in this game, but that's what I wanted his mindset to be.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, like, I guess the real turning point for him was in 2 games in a row when I almost killed one of James's characters. It's what we
Same episode too.
Yeah, in
like
session
again,
3.
it was uncanny. It was uncanny how like because like I don't. Oh, gosh, like was that the one where we were missing?
Missing
Yeah, we're
Ty.
missing Thailand.
Yeah.
And then we missed Tess.
Yep.
So what I'm hearing is that we need a 4th person here to actively make sure Dave can kill me.
But yeah, so that was the first time that Connor had ever felt regret for a violent action.
Yeah.
You know, in almost 30 years of being alive, and that was the first time he was like, I shouldn't have done that, so.
That was the moment that I gave you one of your extra tally marks. I didn't say it, but I gave you an extra tally mark after that. Yeah. But of course, having watched both the first game and the second game, coming from all of the knowledge that you have, Steph, but what did you feel about the difference between them, like the different story we tried to tell and all that good stuff?
I mean, I've got nothing but complimentary stuff to say. I thought you picked a really solid theme and nailed it. You know, the way the character arcs went, particularly for Stefan and Olivia, and then on the flip side, like, what do you do when you get given that second chance at the end as well? Yeah, there was a really nice moment with Macy. Was that the character's name? Yeah. With that dawning of realization of, oh, this is my responsibility actually, like along with not just I did this, but like this is now my responsibility to do things. So yeah, the kind of the weight of not just the guilt of what you've done, but how you then resolve it was really nice in this one.
So something that you actually mentioned the first time we did this interview was that the the monsters that we had were, one, very chatty, and two,
They were still very chatty.
still very chatty.
You
I
just
just
have really conversational monsters. It's
can't
cool.
help it. It's just. But I don't remember what exactly you said, but you were kind of mentioning how like that party was so eager to stand and fight, and they were winning fights, where typically that's not really what you would usually see. And in this one, I did preface this with, I know you all love to fight. I would just warn you that this is a horror game and that may not turn out so well for you. And it was Tessa's, like, that first glimpse we got at a monster when hers attacked, where it was like, I shot it with a shotgun and it blew a hole in it, and then it kept going. It kept,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
didn't care.
yeah. And that's, I think that was the turning point
Yeah.
where everyone's like,
That was good.
oh.
Like, okay, we need to run from more things,
Yeah.
please.
It's just I mean, yeah, the key thing with the Locus rule set is always that there should always be 3 options. The odds will be better in your favor for one of those 3, but it's up to you to determine which one you should do at which point.
Mm-hmm.
So you absolutely could have stood and fought her with no eyes. Like, go for it, if you want to. But yeah, it's cool to see that process of, okay, there are other things we can do here, and that's okay. You know, it is part of the game to have those other options.
Absolutely. We kind of talked about how, like, because we did go for a sci-fi setting on this, and we did have a sneak peek into a document that talked about this
Coming
sci-fi
soon,
setting. Yes.
TM.
So it's so good. But it talked about how something like apathy would be present in, you know, these various sci-fi settings, and how something like greed would be present, and how it would manifest in these different versions of society. And I was just hooked as I was reading that. Like, at the first page, I was like, yes, yes, this is amazing. More.
Yeah, I'll definitely co-sign that. I mean, the way that the haunts differ in this particular setting and like how they're written in this particular setting, like, is really where the sci-fi version of this shines here. Because like, just looking at a Discord, for example, I don't think I would have taken Discord in just like regular Locus. That just wasn't one that like really grabbed my attention in comparison to the other ones. But for this one, I was like, you know, Rage Against the Societal Machine. I was like, yes, that one's mine. I'm taking that one. That's what ended up happening.
I think my favorite sort of alternate haunt is probably Malice. I really like the way Malice changes. That was my favorite one to write. But yeah, I mean, it just comes from kind of absorbing and consuming sci-fi media and kind of thinking, okay, so what other set dressings could this same thing have, and how does that change? But yeah, that's cool that you like the way the Discord changed. We had to be really careful with Discord not to just make it, you're a cyberpunk protagonist, because if you're a cyberpunk protagonist, it's not the same thing. Like, being an activist is not the same thing as a Discord haunt, where it is something a lot more malicious in nature. You know, I think we go out of our way to stipulate that cyberpunk is actually more of a community virtue, because you're raging against the machine, sure, but it's for a community, like you're part of something. So yeah, it is a bit of a narrow kind of split between the two, but it's an important distinction, I think, because I don't want to. The last thing we wanted to do was imply that having goals and dreams for the society that you're in to be better is a bad thing, which is not the case. It is absolutely the good thing. So hopefully that came across.
Absolutely, yeah. I know that when we first sat down and kind of had that session 0, we talked about, what some of the differences would be and how everything is kind of shifting that focus from what we did the first time. And then we got Tessa on board, who was brand new to this and didn't really have that first game as a buffer, and we're just like, here's the deep end, push.
Pretty much.
Not
Yeah.
having that buffer, what did you think going into this game, and then suddenly hitting that moment? It's like, oh, this is a horror game.
Well, because I did watch most of the last game, so I feel like I still had a little bit of that buffer.
Yeah.
But it was. There definitely was like kind of I wanted to do like the Pathfinder and the 5e stuff, right? Like I wanted to investigate. I wanted to let me look at stuff, let me figure stuff out, and it was. I think when the eyes happened, and just like the intensity of that moment, and like what can we do? Like what do we do? And then James starts like dissecting a corpse,
Mm-hmm.
and it
You know,
was
as
just
one
like,
does.
Yeah, as you do.
it was that moment where it was just kind of like, oh, this is way different. Like that, like I'm freaked out. My character's freaked out. Like she almost ran. I rolled for it.
That would have
I
been
almost just
understandable.
she
Yeah.
almost just went straight back to the ship and forget the rest of you. She's just gonna stay in her room. Had the dice went that direction, I would have.
That entire scene was actually one of the very first scenes that I wrote. Like, I wanted that moment of discovery of just their eyes being gone, their faces all scratched up, and then you get to see the thing that caused it, and you get to see firsthand what happened to them. That was fun to write, for as weird and demented as that might sound.
I get it.
There was
No, it
something
was a
just
great bit of heralding for monster reveals. It was good.
yeah.
Um, this is kind of maybe a DM side question, idea, just thought, I guess, of like you've run your own game before. I think we kind of talked about that.
I've run lots, but only one. I don't know, in the wild or on the internet, I suppose.
And I know half of us here, I think most of us here have run at least a game of it. Have any of you found that when you're writing for it, when you're making these monsters and building these scenes, do you ever have that moment where you just look at what you have and you're like, oh my god, I am, what is wrong with me? What goes on in my brain
Yeah.
that lets me write this?
Yeah.
I,
But it's balanced out. It's very balanced out by like when I'm writing things, like I think about scenes that's like, this is where I really think this character is gonna step up and like do something really cool. So it's like it's a little balanced out by either or.
I'm still unfortunately only got to cross over to the writing part of it thus far, just due to schedules. We had to wait until summer to run our game because it was going to be 10 weeks in a row on a weekday. I hadn't figured out which one yet, so had to get everybody into the summer mode before we get there. But yeah, it's like each time I write something, I'm just like, I got to go make sure everybody's okay with this because each one
Mhm.
gets a little bit worse. It builds on itself and.
Is there anything that you would find would make that easier? Like, just thinking in terms of kind of guidance for writing, because it's not useful to writing to have to keep stopping and starting and stopping and starting.
Mhm.
Like, most people do better when they get like into a flow of it. Yeah, is there anything you think that would be any advice that would be helpful, or?
So it's not so much of like that. Like I'll sit and I'll write multiple scenes at a time, but then I'm like, okay, new content warning. I have to pass on to players
Hmm.
because like I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is bothering me a little bit, and I'm writing it. I need to make sure that everybody's going to be good with this before we
Yeah,
bring
absolutely.
it out into the wild. So, but to me, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That
No,
it's it
it's all
does
about
become
the
that
content.
visceral.
Mm.
I know a lot of what I wrote, um, it was I really was only able to push it as far as I did because we had so much contact between us. There's so many conversations are you okay with this? Like I'm just checking, is everything all right? How are you feeling? And that gave me the freedom to not like think down of myself that I am writing such horrible things for my friends because they're not only enjoying them, but they're asking for, yes, put us through the horror. We're in a horror game. Give us the horror. And um, I I think that right there is the absolute key mechanic that makes this game function so well with communication, and that is so like heavily stated in the book, and I absolutely love it. It's just you occasionally see that where it's like, hey, you should talk with your players, but no, in this specifically, it says, you need to make sure everyone's okay. You need to communicate, and it actually talks about like the theme of your game can be either surprise your players with these horrible things, or the option we recommend, talk with your players, discuss what they're okay with, and then write a story based on that, which is absolutely just fantastic.
Because you don't have to traumatize your players to do effective horror
Oh,
for them.
not at all.
Like that's just cruel. So yeah, definitely you need to find out like it's still a game at the end of the day. So the minute it becomes not fun, then it stops being a game and therefore should pause and you should go. Let's reassess
Yeah.
and redesign this bit.
Have you ever had that moment in any of the times that you played it with people where you kind of had to like be like, "Hey, let's pause there for a moment."
Um, I've had a couple of moments where it looked like that would happen, but on the whole, I don't think I've ever had to really stop a game. I did early on in one game have to rewrite a whole chunk preemptively when one of my players flagged to me, hold up, this is a massive trigger for me, and I was
Mhm.
like, I'm so glad you told me that because this could have been awful, like absolutely horrible. So it just let me go and let me write something else, which was probably better at the end of the day than the initial idea. And yeah, if she hadn't felt happy to mention that, you know, I could have done some damage, and that's horrible. So you really do need to be careful, and you need to listen. Like the communication isn't just people being like comfortable speaking; it's about being comfortable listening and taking that on board, and then incorporating that.
Absolutely. I did. I'm very, very lucky to have the group that I have that's wanted to play this because I know that at the moment anything was wrong, I would have a message popping up in Discord, and I got to the point where I would just be watching someone's cams when I thought, okay, maybe this might be kind of on their scale of too much. So I'm just watching their faces, and if I see anything that looks, like it might have crossed that line, I shoot the message and say, "Hey, is everything okay? How are you feeling?" And every single time it was, "I am great. This is amazing. Keep going."
It's like, oh, I'm just a very emotive person. So like if I look like I'm like freaked out or anything, like it's just me.
I remember one point in particular, Hooper actually like stopped, and I felt like I was just waiting, like, oh my god, what's happening? What's next? And he was like, oh no, I'm just waiting to make sure Tess is okay. I'm like, oh god, no, you sent me into a panic by making me wait. Keep going. Tell me what's happening to me.
The other side of that, for Tessa and James, the two of you being DMs but not having run this system, how comfortable do you two feel having done what we've done, experienced what we've experienced, and like how do you see yourselves DMing this?
I personally want to DM with this group just because I need to throw a hoop through the same shit that he put me through. As a writer, typically, because it's my job to write one shots or write campaigns. I have gone to some very dark places in terms of what the fuck am I writing right now. Because I thought for the sake of the narrative, it would be best. And I often make sure my players are in mind of just like everyone good with like what I'm gonna like tell you, like here are the warnings for today's session. Because one of my campaigns, one of the characters was an evil, like former evil dictator at his memory rewiped. So as a GM, I was just told make it as dark as possible. And apparently my creative imagination goes, okay, challenge accepted. And so I think if I ran a Locus game, which is something I really want to do, it would be very interesting because as a person myself, I'm very empathetic, I guess. And so a downside of that being if I could sense that, oh, this is a particularly good trigger, not like trigger in a good sense of, oh, I could tell a very good story with it, not actually like I'm going to put you in emotional panic. I will start running with that. And as someone who takes little to no notes, this game seems like it needs a lot more preparation than the notes I just keep in my head, which work 99% of the time. But I think if I was going to actively play Locus and like run it as a GM, I would keep more in mind of the layer system specifically, because I can keep pretty good track of like character trauma in my head. I'm pretty good at keeping track of like, okay, this is where I think this trope would work really well going this way, especially in sci-fi, because I absolutely love watching movies like Alien. I think that's what I would do, just as from like a GM and writer's perspective, is just make
Well,
sure
I
I
mean,
understand the layers.
so Locus is on an open license, so if you wanted to write something and release it, do it.
Oh yeah, but the time though, that's the thing. Do I have the time? See, if Hoop hired me to run it here, that's an excuse for work.
I mean, don't give me any ideas.
Hooper, we have to make money before you can spend.
I know. After
as far as
for free.
Sorry, I do want to give you a chance to answer Tessa, but I do want to talk about that preparation aspect after.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, honestly, one of the things that really gets me with the game is Hooper's choice of music. Because that absolutely like mentally sets you for like what's gonna go down and just puts you on edge. Like even if we're just walking down a hallway, all of a sudden you hear that music and it's like, oh god.
Like, oh wait, the hallway's a mouth. Like, oh no. Like, can we talk about that?
Music is just the best
hallway
thing
a mouth?
for horror games. When I used to run in person pre-COVID, I used to have my laptop with the sound effects and music clips and stuff. And yeah, it can really make the ambience work.
Absolutely does.
If I were to run the game, I almost want to say that I'm trying to focus a little more on like the smaller, like the psychological torture to it. Like, yeah, you need those really big moments to kind of pack at home, like with eyeball screaming. God, that was horrible. But like to have more of those smaller moments to lead up to it, because with like with a one shot, with a 4 session campaign, you kind of have to rush that a little bit more, I feel like. So with being able to build up to that, I think would be really awesome and horrible all at the same time.
There's guidance in the director's guide about how to kind of pace what we class as like the three main mysteries, or like the three main kind of major parts of the story where the characters come to various realizations about what's going on. So yeah, what you're describing is absolutely just incorporated in more spacing out of the clues leading up to that first mystery, which is essentially the acceptance that what's going on is not okay. Like, so there is something weird
so
going
very
on.
wrong.
Yeah. Out of the norm.
Which we absolutely just skipped completely past in this one, and we jumped
Yep.
straight into it with something is weird.
Yeah. Something is weird, go. Don't work out that something's weird, just go.
Yeah, I know that you are definitely more of a subtlety DM than I am, since I have seen you both as the player side and the DM side. But when you say, that subtlety, at that building aspect, I can clearly tell you that my style of storytelling for a horror game is, level. There's weird things happening, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And then up here, something horrible
Yeah.
just happened, and then we're back down here. Everything's fine. There's nothing wrong. There were.
I
Go ahead.
sorry. See, I think a difference in like telling like how each person would approach this game in terms if they were writing it is I'd probably have a closer resemblance to like the movie Slither, where it's just fucked up real fast and it just doesn't stop. And or like the equivalent of The Thing, where it's just like, okay, the first time you interact with this thing, it turned a dog into a weird flesh amalgamation. Like
Mhm.
that just because personally those are always like the movies or stories that always had me personally interested, which is like, oh, it's a nice sunny day, oh shit, that dog's inside out now, like
Right.
uh
But it wasn't
I think that's
always.
what
But it wasn't always at 100. It was, oh shit, that dog's not a dog. And then
oh
like
no, mine would be 100 all the time. It goes from 100 to 150 to 200.
Yeah.
It I think that's just like personally because that's like my brand of storytelling is if I want a very subtle game, I'll run a very subtle game. But as someone who loves horror films where like it's always in front of you, like I just finished binge watching The Purge and Saw. So like those movies are like very in your face of like here's the concept, run with it. And I think that's like where you'd see very interesting play styles in this game in the sense of a horror story is because I'm gonna be very in front of like you, but that goes for like any game I really run. It's just unless expressly told different, I'm going to throw everything at you and hope to God something works, and then I'll run with that.
This is absolutely a question for everyone that's run this game, because you brought up preparation. Starting, of course, with you, Steph, when you have run this game in the past, and I guess when you were writing it, have you seen that it takes a different kind of preparation? I guess I don't know if you run other types of TTRPGs.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started running games well over a decade and a bit ago. Jesus. And I started with D&D, and then a bit of Call of Cthulhu, and then a bit of World of Darkness, and then a few more kind of esoteric sort of sideways systems, before eventually trying to make one with my friend. So In terms of prep, I'd say yes. I'm a very prep heavy DM anyway, and that's just my style of DMing. So it probably has somewhat crept into the requirements of Locus, because I'm not afraid of having to write loads to get my head around a concept to then be able to run it. What I always like doing in anything I run is getting a good idea of, this is the play area, like this is the stuff that's going on if the players weren't in it, so that I then understand what will happen when the players interact with it and make it all not go how I planned. Like, the better I understand like what's going on, the more I can be reactive with what they do.
Mhm.
That's what I've always found works. So I put a lot of world building time in, to make sure I can have answers if they throw me a curveball question, which, always happens.
Always.
And equally, I have also ended up writing a load of stuff and then putting it to one side and winging half the game. I've also done that. So, yeah.
Do you feel like the prep is any different being on the more like prep heavy side of DMing? Do you feel it was different preparing for a game of Locus versus like a game of D&D?
Yeah, I think you've got. I think the thing that is actually a pro from the prep is the monsters. So the monster creation, by its nature, requires collaboration with the players, but also private prep on the DM's end. And that, I think, is where the game really shines as well. So while it does need that extra prep, it's for a really good reason.
100%. I cannot recommend and gloat enough about how amazing that monster creation system is. It's so good.
Man, that creation system was my baby, very much.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And I will second that. I have fun sitting and playing around with that, even if like it was they're never going to see the light of day. Just making the monsters is fun by itself.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome to hear.
Heck and Dave, I know you guys have more of the DM insight of preparing for this game. Do you find that the preparation is different when you're preparing for Locus versus something else?
Very much so. I've got. Hang on, just 1 second. Okay. Never mind. It stopped. I was like, that got a little loud there for
It
a
did.
second. I couldn't think. But yeah, so I am like note card and NPC prep guy for most of my games, but I am writing if, almost like I'm coding, preparing for Locus, just because you have to know, just lay all the possibilities out, and they're still going to pick a different one than the 12 that you put down, but at least you have. That's kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is way more prep heavy for me, but that comes from somebody who's very much like, I want to get these 3 points in this session at some point. And I'm also a GM that likes to sit back and watch my players for 30-40 minutes without saying a word. And I try to create situations where that can happen. I think the one game of mine that you did come into, they were on a beach at a bar and
Yep.
everything was okay for 45 minutes. Later on, it was not so okay. Just
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that the prep is different, and the way that I went about doing it was, I like drawing out like concept maps and like drawing out like diagrams and stuff to do a lot of my prep. I don't know why my brain works that way, but it does. Where I literally drew out a series of like waves that I wanted to keep like with each hour, since each hour in game you're drawing cards. I wanted to keep in time with that. So roughly I would have, the first wave is like, everything's like still pretty all right. There was one like little jump scare when like a pigeon like came out from under one of the church pews, but it's like, oh no, everything's still okay. It's creepy because like it's an abandoned convent, but like things are all right. But then like, things start getting a little weirder. And then like by a third wave, it's like, okay, like I think we might be down another layer already. Like things are not fine at all. And then by the fourth wave, it's just like, we got to get out of here. And like that's kind of the challenge for that. Like under each of those waves I would have like particular like challenges that I thought would be like on the level of the mood that I was trying to get. So like
Wow.
I forget if it was second or third wave, but one of those waves had a part where they found a crypt that was like long abandoned underneath this convent. It was sealed up from the cellar, but they had to get out. They were getting chased by the monster, so it's like, okay, we're gonna break this wall with the sledgehammer, and we're gonna go. But inside that crypt, it was a challenge of if they wanted to get more information and risk a, couple pips on their death's door, or they just want to get out. Which the nun that had previously been at that convent actually risked some health pips to learn some more information about the background, which was really interesting. So it just yeah, that's just how my prep went. Just having like you know little to big problems, I guess, which does not really happen that much with like D&D and other things
Mm-hmm.
that I do. I do more like scenes, like scene by scene
Yeah.
prep with like everything else.
I can tell you that you all definitely put in more prep than I do into this. Um, like I will write down like things in a scene that I know I want to cover if this scene were to come up. But otherwise, I have notes of like if they go here, this can happen. If they go here, this can happen. Otherwise, it's very much an open world. I run a very player driven story and just respond to what the players are doing, which can be difficult at times because you all decide to do things that I never would have thought up in a million years, and I'm like, oh, I didn't write anything for that.
Oh,
All
that's half
right.
the fun though. That's when the fun bit comes in as the DM for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It it was just interesting for me because I don't outline scenes like that for any other game I've DM'd. And since I started streaming, we've played probably 20 different games. Not for a single other one do I prepare like I did for Locus. It was just very, very interesting for me. I know we kind of ended with a few character questions when we ended the last stream, but did you guys have any questions for each other? I know that was like a year ago for gaming time.
I had one for James actually.
Oh,
Why
boy.
did you decide to become the monster?
A little bit of a metagamey kind of prescription to it, because as a player, I'm still trying to tell a story, and so I am well aware of poetic justice or irony when it hits. And so one of the factors was, okay, this makes sense in a story sense if he just accepted where he was going. I think in terms of like actual like story, the justification was he's tired. He can't keep this denial in a sense, so he needs to punish himself by just becoming it. And so I thought that that's where Stefan would normally go, was a kind of I give up, but I give up for the right reasons kind of mentality. At least
So,
that's what I remember thinking.
so do you feel like that was less like it's still character growth, but do you feel like it was less I'm becoming a better person and more of just like fuck it, I'm done?
I think it's a bit of realizing that he was. I thought he's like, okay, I'm a good person now. I've like come to terms with what I've done. But I still think there's this a little bit of coping, I guess would be the term for him, which is I still need to like face punishment for what I've done.
Mhm.
And when Olivia was just like, "Oh no, we both fucked up. We need to like deal with this." I think that's kind of just when it was like, "All right, the other two haven't really like done anything to the level like I have, so I could sacrifice all of the tally marks to make sure they still make it to the other side, and my punishment will be staying here." Because I initially thought Olivia was also going to go up, and it would be just me trapped in the other side.
Mhm.
Because he really wanted to go back onto the what he viewed as reality, and obviously that's not where his character ended up. But I thought, in a story sense, it was very poetic justice-y for his
Me too.
character.
Of
Thank you.
course, I
Also,
have. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I thought it was kind of interesting how Connor and Stefan ended up in each other's happy ending, but didn't like the one they got.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
so
an
sad.
existence of fighting for all of eternity. He was fine with that. He accepted that and was ready to go. But society, on the other hand, that's scary.
It was living that he was just
Yeah.
not down for. Of course, because I am me and I can't possibly resist tinkering with a system that I've been given. Of course, I have to add my own homebrew mechanics. Last time it was the hope that half the party was given that basically gave you a get out of jail free card once. This time it was certainty. It was knowing where you belong. It was being certain in your convictions and using that to strengthen and decide where you were going to end up. And half the party used their certainty to basically give the other half the ending that they felt they deserved. And I got 2 private messages saying I want to give all of my tally to the others. And it alone, the belief from Heck and Dave's characters may not have been enough to solidify that yes, they get to go to paradise. But with the fact that their friends believed in them so hard, they were given that chance to decide that that's where they get to end up.
Well, I don't think it was only just that. It was just I think Olivia and Stefan viewed themselves as beyond redeemable. Like, you killed somebody because you were trying to stop, a mass weapon being made. Like, Connor fucked up by just being born in the wrong place. And so a lot of it, in my head at least, was okay, they were put into tough situations. I wasn't, and I am the one who, like, I actively caused the thing to happen. So I'm beyond redemption. And I won't speak for Tess here, but I kind of think that's where Olivia was at as well. It's just we were both irredeemable in our own eyes, but the other two had a chance to make up for whatever past sins they committed.
Yeah.
For Olivia, it was that the doctor had straight up said, like they had the conversation in the hallway, like I know what I've done wrong and I'm going to fix it. It was the fact that she had the opportunity and like the not, it wasn't just like, oh, this is my fault, hee hee, oops, like aw shucks, moving on. Like she was going to fix it. She was going to come clean.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was, yeah, I guess redemption. Like she had a redemption that she could have taken. Whereas I don't know that Olivia thought she wasn't worth it, but just she should have stayed behind and she should have helped. So if she can now help on the other side, she'll be back instead.
Yeah. The other thing that I did really want to talk about, because he was my favorite character that I've written for Locus so far, was the Good Doctor, who got shot so many times, and every time came back just more and more horrific, more and more monstrous, which also kind of coincided with all of you going deeper into the layers of this. He was a physical representation of this virus progressing through the human body, taking over more and more. And he was always so civil, so polite, so gentle in his tone, but underneath that was just this horrific monster. And that was so much fun to make and interact with you all. Because he was trying to help. He was trying to cut away the threads that kept you in both places. Of course, that took away your ability to choose where you wanted to go, so it wasn't helpful that much. But the when you saw him dragging like nothing, it looked like he was just dragging a heavy bag of nothing. That was him hauling away people that he had cut, bodies that he had successfully done the surgery on, and their choice was taken from them. Yeah.
Okay, but like, where did the creepy poem come from?
It is such a beautiful poem if you read the whole thing in its entirety. But
Oh,
if you read only the parts that I read, it is so creepy.
it's so creepy.
Let me see if I still have it.
Mhm.
It's called Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I'm not there. I do not die. Now, if that's the first two and the last two lines, the entire rest of the poem is about being the gentle rain and the falling snow and the singing birds. It's a beautiful poem, and I took it and I ruined it.
Great. Thanks.
Weave the Tale rating with a party of 15. Thank you so very
friends.
much. We are talking with a absolutely amazingly talented author, the one of the writers of the Locus TTRPG, and yeah, we're getting all that trauma out there. I did have one last question for you, Steph. When you wrote this sci-fi version of a game that you obviously have so much love for, because it clearly shows in everything that you put out, did you have a specific story in mind? Like, not necessarily from like a certain setting, but like as you were writing that was like, oh, if I put that into this story, that would be so cool.
Writing the original, there was a story that I had tried to run in other systems but could never get quite right. Which was very much like the weight of personal responsibility and guilt as a narrative through line. And yeah, like how we deal with guilt is very much the stories that I want Locus to be able to tell. And you know, the fact that they can do it with really heckin' creepy monsters, that's even better. So yeah, it was kind of just like the original game I ran was a bit of a botched job, new WOD game, like World of Darkness, and where it was set in a hospital, and it was all very weird, and the each kind of iteration of the day the players went through, it was the same day, but they'd start it in someone else's body that was in the place. and that kind of came down to they'd have to work out who they were, and then see where that person's guilt comes from, and kind of move on, like with this time loop that went on and on until they worked out what was going on. Yeah, that was the first game, and then after I did that, I went, what didn't work for that? And that kind of started me and Jack on that journey of let's just make our own game. Although I haven't actually tried to run it again with Locus. I feel like Locus has become a bit bigger than that one idea, and is capable of doing a lot more now.
Yeah, like I've talked with multiple people now, all DMs of like ideas and settings you can do, and it is absolutely limitless. There's no boundaries to what kind of story you can tell other than what you and your players agree on, which is so fantastic. Like, even just mentioning like having it set in a hospital, my brain is already just running through with ideas.
Yeah. I've written ones. There was one set in a mall that wasn't quite finished being built. There was one that was in the town that the original hospital was in. I did kind of a sequel story, although that was in the first iteration of Locus, and the rules were not yet what they are now. So we just swapped back to something that worked. Yeah, that was a bit confusing halfway through, but it was for the sake of the story. Yeah, so yeah, I've done ones at a seaside village with holiday goers. Yeah, and we've got so many ideas. We've got like a pages and pages of ideas of things we wanted to do. One of the things with the Kickstarter, I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last stream, but we were going to do different supplements, not just the sci-fi guide for different like styles of settings. We were going to do one set in the ancient world. We were going to do one set in World War I trenches. We were going to look at doing, one set purely in nature, looking at like forests and stuff and mountains.
Yeah, that a World War One themed game was almost what we went with for that first game of Locus, because like just picturing that setting with like these rule sets, and oh, so good. Just because like the unfortunate horrors that happened during that time period set such a perfect stage for something like this that it makes for an amazing story. Yeah. Of course, I want to give any of you any last comments, any questions that any of you happen to have for myself, for each other, for Steph, since we're all here. And I know it's getting super late for some of you, for some of us from across the other side of the world, which we super appreciate that you're here, even though we know it's late. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, floor is open to you.
I just think it was a really well written game, and I personally would love to run Locus at some point soon. I am buzzing with ideas after this particular session, because now I have an idea, and that won't go away until I write it down. So after this particular meeting, I'm gonna take a nap, and then I'll start working on it.
You guys got to see me bumble my way through 2 versions of this game. By the end of this game, by the end of the second one, I feel like I almost know what I'm doing. Almost.
I don't think that you bumbled at all here. You did not show a single bumble.
I can absolutely tell you that my level of comfort in running the system from the first one compared to the second one was leaps and bounds different. I stopped being concerned about what exactly the rules said about certain things and went off of what my gut instinct was saying worked best within the rule set for the story. And it's so flexible and so malleable in how you play the game that you can do that and it doesn't break anything. It still works perfectly as intended, which we're just going to keep talking you up because that is amazing game design.
So I'm obviously the writer, but a lot of the game design, other than I did monster design, but that's most of what I did. The actual game design was very much down to my partner in crime, Jack, who's the other half of Cobblepot Games.
And
Yeah,
I
excellent game designer.
fantastic. And I can probably speak for absolutely everyone that I would be very excited to see what a game run by you would look like.
I'm very eager to play one. I've got two on the back burner. So two different ideas, and one of them I'd be very keen to. It's a bit ambitious. I might need two different groups for the same
Ooh.
story. So yeah, I'd absolutely love to invite you all to it if you're free, and we can make the scheduling work. Because having listened to you all like twice now play it, yeah, I think you absolutely be amazing players for it.
Oh. We do have a question from chat from Otter Poet. In horror, do you like to explore the concept of monsters as metaphors?
Yes. So, fun fact: I actually did for my master's degree. I did my kind of dissertation was about the modernization of the metaphor of Greek monsters in modern video games. That was my dissertation, because they told me I could write about what I wanted to write about, so I wrote about horror and video games in my classics degree, as you do. Yeah. So yeah, I love monster as metaphor.
Absolutely.
It has endless depths of like symbolism you can go into. Yeah. I think it really works from the psychological elements of horror as well, especially when you go into that
Yeah.
personal element of, you know, this thing might not be symbolic of X to this person, but might to this other person. So that's where the
Absolutely.
personalization can come in.
Yeah. Fantastically put. Like, I what I did for each player, for each character during each game was from what I knew about each of these people and what I knew certain monsters would represent to that person. Though if I used those different monsters for different people, it wouldn't have worked out like it
Yeah.
did.
It just doesn't work when you kind of put the same template over someone else. It's all about that. Yeah, that personalized element was super important, and I think it's what makes the monster design work so well.
Yes. 100%. Well, I know we got a bunch of people in the raid from Weave the Tale. If any of you have not played Locus, or if you haven't seen our playthroughs of Locus, I would highly recommend it if you love horror games, and I know pretty much everyone Weave the Tale does because you play games like Necrobiotic and Cult, all that good stuff. So you can absolutely go find it on the Cobblepath itch.io page, I believe, along with all of your other awesome products that you guys have been.
Far sillier games. One of which is coming to GameFound to be funded at the start of June, which is Coffee and Chaos.
Ooh.
We're doing another. Yeah, we're doing another silly one. Yeah, so we've got Locus, which is our flagship title. Definitely, it's our sort of creative baby that got kickstarted successfully a couple of years ago now. We've written various short stories you can run with it. We've got a supplement in the works for sci-fi that's coming out. We've also produced nonsense like Stacks of Goblins, where you play a goblin in a stack of goblins stealing stuff from the human peoples, which is a very short, like, round robin storytelling game where whoever is the top goblin kind of is the DM a little bit. And Coffee and Chaos, which is coming out to GameFound to be crowdfunded at the start of June, which I can give you a link for, or
Yes, please.
my good friend Jack can, if she's in the chat. hopefully. But yeah, so what it's about is it's about running a cafe or a pub or a tavern or whatever establishment from whatever setting you like, something that sells drinks probably. And every round, things will go wrong. With card draws, and you have to decide how you're going to deal with it. What's your approach going to be? Is it going to be creative? Is it going to be more direct and forceful, like the first idea that comes into your head, or are you going to sit down and consider it and think it through? So yeah, and all of these different approaches are handled in cutlery. So you've got, the knife is the straightforward, direct approach, kind of thing. And the really good thing about it is we've made it so that the rules are so fluid. You can literally play your characters from your D&D campaign as like a one-off holiday
Aw.
session, or you could play your Locus characters and see how they handle running a cafe after what they've been through. And they have all their powers from that game that work however you want them to, because it's a comedy one-shot game.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's things like, the coffee machine breaks, suddenly you have to rebrand as a juice bar. You can't work out how to deal with the celebrity that's just come in, so you have to have some expenditure of resources on that. Meanwhile, the toilet's breaking and you've got deliveries turning up. So you send the person with levitation powers to go and deal with the delivery, but then they were needed to solve the bathroom problem, and chaos happens. Hence coffee and chaos.
That sounds absolutely amazing, and I am so excited to get to run that. Otter Poet, I just wanted to say that, as I say, they also write Horror TTRPGs, and they're absolutely going to
Excellent.
look into Locus. Yeah. The monster creation system in Locus, if you weren't here when we talked about it, is fantastic. It is so personalized because you, as the DM, have to work with your characters, with your players, to customize a monster for each and every character, which makes it so much more impactful when they show up in the story. And just I will literally rave about this game all day long whenever anyone asks me about it, because it's so much fun to play.
Shall I sign you up for my my ambitious
Yes.
2-group one then?
Yes, I will be there. But yeah, I don't know if if anyone else has any questions, you of course are more than welcome to throw them out. Otherwise, I feel like we've already gone a bit later than we had planned, which is fine because our game of Lancer went later than we had planned.
Did it now?
A little bit. It was an emotional session. Someone almost died. It's fine.
I wonder who that is.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do sincerely want to thank all of my wonderful players here, and Ty, who wasn't able to do this one, but gave Tessa the chance to come in. You all were absolutely fantastic. You always gave me amazing characters to work with. You gave me so much, and we made such beautiful monsters together that tried to tear you to pieces. And yeah, just thank you. You guys were fantastic. And of course, thank you to Steph for giving us the opportunity to get a sneak peek into the sci-fi supplement and get to run that.
Yeah, I'll mine you for feedback shortly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this has been amazing. I didn't really know what was going to happen when I started this whole streaming idea. I thought that it would last a couple months and we'd have 5 people that just kind of showed up every once in a while, and then our community just grew and grew and grew. And I think I saw your post on Twitter, either you or Jack, and it said, "Hey, we have this horror game. Anyone want to try it out?" And I said, "Yes, I love horror games." And it led to all of this and meeting all these fantastic people and getting to talk with you multiple times. I I don't think I say this enough, that I'm still grateful for everyone that's come by to help us get it where we are, and I'm excited for, what we get to do in the future. I think this is going to be just an amazing roller coaster, and I am here for it.
Yeah.
Yay. All right. I don't want to keep you up any later. Thank you so much for being here and for chatting and answering all of our questions. And yeah. I don't know if any of you have any parting words. Otherwise, I'm gonna sign us out and get ready for our next stream, which is another Lancer game. Sundays are my busy days of streaming very early into the evening. But
I guess my sign off would just be to thank you all, because you've made like my little horror fan heart flutter with your wonderful tales of terrible decisions and tragic endings and indecision, and yeah, it's so cool to, as a creator, to watch someone take something that we made and run with it and like grow it and manipulate it and yeah, tell awesome stories with it. That's really rewarding.
So we didn't just totally, take it and just destroy it by throwing my homebrew rules into it and then just ignoring rules and...
Not at all. Like you stuck to the spirit of the thing, which is always way more important, and you told an awesome story, which is it's the main thing.
You scared the pants off of all your players.
I am so glad that you have enjoyed both of our games. I was very nervous for the first one. The second one just kind of went with it. I was more nervous that the story wasn't going to work out. Just because the idea of two divergent storylines is so difficult to run in such a short span of sessions. But yeah, I think it turned out amazing. And if you haven't seen either of the streams, both the first game, which was set in like the 1990s, I believe, in a small town in the mountains of Colorado during a snowstorm, that one and this one, which was set in the sci-fi future on a spaceship with all kinds of time weirdness, and just watch them both. They're both amazing. Even if you have watched them, go back and rewatch them. They're so much fun. But
I think my signing off words will be get a petition going for me as GM. I won't stop till it happens. One of these
Is
months you're
anything
bound to wear
stopping
down.
you?
No, I mean, I'll play that position.
Scheduling. I don't know. I'll talk with
Okay.
friends after stream. I'll talk with.
That's
I
on
really want to
you.
run it with this group, though. I really want to run. I have a good idea.
I mean,
No, I won't get it out.
if we can make the time work, maybe we can get Steph in the
June.
next one.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out.
Oh yeah, that's
Sign me
I
up.
have no college now. Yeah, I can do it any time of day.
Heck, Dave, Tessa, you guys got anything?
I mean,
Let's
I
hope
think
that
y'all
does
have already, y'all have already covered all the bases.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Let's keep going.
Let's start now.
Game 3. All right, let's go. Sorry, Tessa, what were you saying?
Oh, I said, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need to roll characters. We'll make them up as we go. Let's do
Yep.
this.
That would be a real fun game. You all wake up with amnesia and
Yeah,
you
like-
just gotta fucking roll with the punches.
Oh
That'd be
God.
great.
Well, that's the thing. It's like where if the DM just has a bunch of like randomized character sheets, and then like you have to figure out what your stats are based on things you try to do. Like that, it's done with other systems. It'd be really
seen it with
interesting to see for
5e
Locus.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be really disappointing when you do it with Locus, though.
Well, because you have like what 3 things that you really need to stat out. Sorry, you have your main stats, and then you have your cards, and so you just need to find out which one's your virtues and which ones are haunt.
Yeah.
Because everything else is just tracked.
That
I don't know,
would,
it'd still be fun.
that'd
Don't
be
get me wrong.
interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh, it would be great. Yeah, but just the disappointment of going to try and open a door with like shoulder barging it and realizing you've actually got frailty 5. So You've just broken your
Yeah.
shoulder, you know.
You're this big, massive athlete, and you go to ram the shoulder, and you realize you've had, replacement surgery 8 times on that shoulder, and
Yep.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, all of you, for watching. We had like 20 viewers at one point, which is crazy. For some reason, Sunday is our most watched day. Don't know why. It just is.
The best people are here on Sundays, that's why.
We do have another game of Locus scheduled immediately after this. We are running... Lancer, thank you. I always
was like,
get them.
what?
Like,
Always.
we are going now then? Okay.
Hell
Yeah, it's only like
Not
Might need a
midnight
cup
for
of
you.
coffee to keep me up.
You didn't need to sleep, right?
Nah.
Yeah, fine. I don't have a day job.
Yes, thank you all so much. We are going to take a quick break after this while I get ready for the game of Lancer. And, yeah, we end the day with the last stream of our Sunday. And I'm looking forward to it. We're raiding a pirate vessel under the guise of being a merchant ship. So it should be lots of fun. But, we're going to put a pause in it there, so thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in hopefully like 20 minutes, I hope. So,
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.